and welcome in to another episode of Heat of the Moment. My name is Micah. I'm joined as always by my fellow host and friend Lino. And Heat fans, it is officially the off season. There's some very fun basketball happening for teams that are still participating in the postseason, but for us Heat fans, it is the off season. It's time to officially turn the page on the 2026 season. And to do that, I think we'll need to talk about how it ended and what we learned from it. So, for anyone that missed it or just kind of forgot, the Heat season ended in the play-in. For the first time, actually, they've always managed to make it out of the play-in, but this time they were eliminated by the Charlotte Hornets. It was a very fun game, especially if you ignore the fact that LaMelo Ball injured Bam Adebayo in a crazy dirty play. But Davion Mitchell stepped up big time. Andrew Wiggins was huge. Crazy shot making down the stretch. Ultimately, the Heat lose and the season ends. And that kind of takes us to recapping this season. There were a lot of ups and downs, some of that due to injury, some of that due to the new offense. But Lino, as a kind of overarching theme of the season, when you look back on 2026, what do you think you'll say you learned about this team, whether it was the players, the coaches, etc.?
The one thing that I feel like I learned about this team is that, and it's a pretty sad thing to learn about your team, but it's just the fundamental truth that we don't have enough to be competitive. Ultimately, there were a ton of shining moments through this season, and if you go by the numbers, we saw some improvements here and there, and that's specifically from some of the additions to the roster over the past 2 years. But even with those players coming in and some of those players playing better than they have in their whole careers or even in the time that they've been here, it was not enough to elevate us beyond a 10th seed. And that's just not good enough. And it's a painful realization because this season actually started off at a really sweet spot, but it is just ultimately the truth that I've had to sit with since we have made our chaotic exit out of the play-in this year.
Yeah, I think that's well said. It I don't want to be like too harsh on this team, but I did when I started taking my notes on like what I learned. I The first line is, well, I guess the best place to start is in the middle. And that's honestly what this team ended up, confirming to us. And I think partially what was frustrating is this team ended up being about what we thought they would in the preseason, which I think is frustrating for fans that are like, how did the front office not realize this team was headed in this direction? Be funny enough, you and I both guessed 43 wins, which is exactly what they ended up finishing with. But yeah, to me, I think it was a team that, had improvement from the previous season, but also I think the league was worse. For at least half the season, a third of the league was tanking. So in that way, yes, they won six more games, but due to the lack of competition, I don't really feel like there was anything to convince me they're going to win six more games next year, and vault up to almost a 50 win pace. I think it was more just kind of a similar level of team, just getting a few more wins because there was more tanking, which also, speaking of, it sounds like there's some lottery reform on the way that will lessen tanking by quite a bit, which should kind of be concerning for the Heat because that means some of those easy wins will be taken off the schedule. But we can talk about that later. I think the place to start is probably the offense as far as what the takeaways are from this season. Lino, I mean, we talked about it so much, but and now that you got a full season of, this hybrid between the Noah LaRoche, the Spolstra version of the Noah LaRoche
Mhm.
offense, how do you feel about it? And do you hope it's something we continue to use going forward?
Certainly something that I'm torn about. It's one of those things where watching it, I actually had a lot of fun. I think this offensive system for the players in which it worked for brought out the best in them for guys like Davion Mitchell, guys like Jaime Jaquez Jr., and even for the little bit of time that Tyler got to play in it, he found a lot of success as individual players. And we got to see some fast paced basketball for the first time in a long time. That shows up in the stats and the games in which we scored a bunch of points, it was quite fun. The only problem with it is there's probably an equal amount of players on our roster that really struggled in this system, maybe brought out the worst in them, and really didn't necessarily create the space for them to thrive. And when it wasn't working, it really looked kind of basic and elementary as an offensive system whenever we face higher tiered elite defenses. And so while I respect Spo for finally trying something different on offense, and I did enjoy parts of how the highlights felt, the lowlights did seem pretty frustrating, and it really felt like we were not getting all the juice out of the squeeze from our entire roster. I think guys like Bam, guys like Ware, clearly guys like Nikola Jovic, really not Bam didn't struggle. He got 83 points a game this season, and he's just an amazing player across the board. But these larger players didn't necessarily have the space that they needed to do what they do best, perhaps. Maybe that's not even the best way to say it, but I feel like overall, this system didn't necessarily allow them to be the best version of how they like to play. So I don't know. I think we should definitely make some differences. I think a lot of our stats are bloated by an insane pace. And ultimately, there's probably a better way for us to be more efficient moving forward. But, when you look at this system, is it something that you hope to see around next season? Or do you feel like we should turn the page on the Noah LaRoche style of basketball?
It's I'm torn as well. I would say the pace I definitely want to stick around. Being first in pace, I think, was a big deal for this team, and I get from Spo's perspective why he probably felt like he needed to be really rigid about no pick and roll, just isolation drives, and kind of marrying that with the pace. I think if he would have gone into this season with a more traditional pick and roll dribble handoff game and just told the guys, but play faster, I don't think it would have worked. But I'm optimistic that maybe now with a year of this, he can kind of marry the two offenses a little more. Those first few games, or I guess like few stints where Tyler came back and then left with an injury. When he returned, the pick and roll volume for the team went up, and it was mostly Tyler running those. I think, and of course this is like an easy thing to like want your team to do, but I think a version of the Indiana Pacers offense from their finals run season would be something that he could strive towards, because that team ran a ton of pick and roll. They did a lot of isolation attacking, but it was because they did really quick up tempo pacing that they got the
Mhm.
mismatch out of the pick and roll and then they attacked. So it was still a lot of dribble drive, but there was enough on ball screening to allow, like you were saying, like a guy like Bam. I mean, to me, Bam is a top three screen setter in the league. I mean, we saw for Duncan, Strus, you go down the line. I mean, Bam got those guys open, and that just went away this season. And that just,
Mhm.
I mean, Bam finds a way to be impactful in winning, but that is just like taking one of his best skills offensively off the table. So I would like to see a blend, and I'm hopeful that now that Spo has a top 12 season in offense with the pace, that he can kind of bring that to the guys and maybe marry a little bit more of the pick and roll actions in there as well.
Yeah, I think the other aspect of the offense that struggled was the fact that, when everybody was moving during the first 2 months of the season and this system, everything looked awesome because of how much off ball movement was happening alongside when we talk about the wheel and things of that nature. But as the season went on, players got tired, players got injured, other teams are trying to slow down the game. It turned into a lot of guys standing around. You got a guy like Bam Adebayo standing in the corner doing nothing. You got Andrew Wiggins standing in the corner waiting for a pass to shoot a three, which is, an effective shot, an efficient shot, but it was not when the team was not locked in on being in motion and going at that breakneck speed in the half court. The offense looked like it was in shambles all the time. So yeah, Spo has a lot of answers like or questions like that rather, that he needs to find answers to in order to make this something that can really stick for this team in a way that will be effective.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And I think you saw that as the season went on and it was scouted more, you could tell teams were aware of what the Heat were trying to do, and then they were intentionally trying to stop it. And then I think you especially saw it just against better, longer teams that, like you said, the wheel, the movement, that's what you want. But with the way this offense works, somebody has to break a guy down off the dribble and, force help to rotate
Mhm.
essentially.
Get 2 feet in the paint.
And then the wheel can spin and the blender can kind of get going and guys can create good looks. But as we saw time and time again against teams like Orlando, Toronto, even Boston that had length and size, it was like you're really overtasking guys like Pella Larson, Davion Mitchell, Andrew Wiggins to break guys down off the dribble when that's really just not something you'd ever ask them to do in a traditional NBA offense to do over and over again, especially against their primary defender, which is what this offense often asks of you. It's not saying get the mismatch in attack. It's saying, hey, your guys in front of you, you just got to find a way to beat them off the dribble, and that's why it was an interesting concept because so often during the Jimmy era of the Miami Heat, it always felt like every guy was one slot too high offensively, like in the hierarchy.
Mhm.
Like Jimmy is your second best offensive player, is amazing. But every night, if you're asking him to be the most important offensive player, then Tyler, then Bam, it was just too much for those guys. This offense eliminates the hierarchy, and I think that's for better and worse. And what we saw against lesser teams, it was very effective because Pella Larson was just driving through guys and creating layups and open looks. But against better defenses, it really got run down and kind of brought into the mud and looked worse than the offense from last year at times, which is crazy to think about. So yeah, it'll be interesting. I mean, Spo's brilliant. I think, like you noted, it's most important that he was open to change, and I think that means we can expect change going forward. And as always, the roster will determine all of this. You know, if by some miracle Donovan Mitchell is the guy starting this blender or Giannis Antetokounmpo, then yeah, like it's going to look a lot better because they are going to
Mhm.
consistently beat their primary defender off the dribble. But
Now,
it,
could I ask you something actually? Because around this time last year, we were wondering if Spo needs to bring in more help. And we got the Noah LaRoche system and him coming in as kind of a consultant. Um, and a more inflammatory podcast would probably be having a conversation of, okay, Spo has not exactly elevated this team to anything good in about 4 or 5 years. A head coach lifespan is typically shorter than that for a team that's finished 10th place 2 years in a row, been in the play-in for the past 4 or 5 years. That's not really a conversation I'm looking to have as far as should we get rid of Spo. I don't have the energy to put towards that. But it is worth asking again, like, does Spo need to find some more outside help from an offensive standpoint? Obviously, I think he runs this organization well, gets a lot of juice out of the squeeze on at least the defensive side of things. And it was cool to see him being open minded about a new system. And the new system did improve our offense by a tremendous amount from a rating standpoint. So, does that lend itself to the fact that we should continue to press on getting more new minds in the building to see what could work?
Yeah, I mean, it definitely showed it can have positive results, and I think more importantly than anything else, it shows that Spo is willing to adapt and change. I mean, the offense they ran was like pretty radical. Like we had half
Mhm.
a season of Memphis running this, and that was it for NBA history, essentially.
Yeah.
So we didn't just see Spo go to like a more complex pick and roll offense. He went to something that was really hadn't been done for a full season before and fully committed to it and got the entire roster to fully commit to it. And like you noted, I mean, Bam is an amazing star player to work with, but Bam really struggled out of the gate. Like that had to be tough as a head coach to be like, hey man, like your numbers are down. You're not going to be an all-star. You're not going to get any accolades, but I need you to keep running for me. And
Mhm.
he was able to get guys to do that. So yeah, I mean, to me, more than anything, gives me confidence that Spo is going to continue to look for help from, outside voices and hopefully bring in more people to elevate the team. Like he did this past season.
You heard it here first, folks. Micah is unwilling to fire Eric Spoelstra as our head coach, despite
It's
years
true.
of failure.
If Spo leaves his franchise, I better be getting a first round pick. I'll say that. I think any team in the league would give you a first for Spo. So, but yeah, I think the offense is going to be the biggest thing to take away from. If you're looking, Lino, at individual guys, and not to be completely negative because we will talk about some positive stuff. But if you're looking at individual players on the roster and you're looking at going into next season, how do you hope they are able to improve, or what do you hope they work on this off season? Are there specific aspects of anybody's individual games that you really hope or improve going into next year?
The number one guy who has no choice but to improve what he did last year is Nikola Jovic. His new contract starts up, I think, if not now, then next season. We are going to be paying him a lot of money. He had one of the worst seasons Heat role player has probably had in a long time, as far as I can remember. We could have a whole game show about who's had worse ones, but I just, again, we're at the end of the season. It's time to put these bad feelings to rest. I won't focus too much on how bad of a time he had last year, but it's really important that he does something for this team next year, because ultimately the team needs him. Because there's, one or two scenarios that happen going into this next season or the following, and it's that we trade away some of our star talent, some of our talent, and he's probably not going to be involved in that just because he's not valuable right now as an asset, and so he'll be getting minutes one way or the other. Or we do bring somebody in, or we don't do anything, and the only place we could see improvement, as the players I think last season played to their best abilities outside of him, and maybe Khalil Ware. So the only place we can get improvement is from the guy we're about to start paying, like 18, $20 million a year. So he's got to figure something out to be able to be on the floor, and it would help us tremendously. It would help his career tremendously. I love the kid. I really want him to do well, and I really want him to figure it out. But that is the one spot I'm looking at where, I would not be surprised if Spo has him in the rotation again next season, trying to figure out how we get him on the floor more, because it's important when he plays well, because he can do so much, theoretically speaking.
Yep. Yeah, no, I think that's a perfect pick. And like you said, like I keep seeing on Twitter, and it's not just like from random Heat fans, it's like Bleacher Report, ESPN, whatever. But they're like hypothetical Giannis trades often involve Jovic as part of the salary going to Milwaukee. And I'm like, there's no way Milwaukee's gonna take on that money. That would be like diminishing our offer. Like it would be better just to attach like, I mean, who like Drew Smith or somebody. I mean, I'm sure that much a team would rather have Jaime or somebody like that. But yeah, I feel like Heat fans are just trying to be like, and I guess we'll give you Jovic. That's like that would cost
It's
us
a wrap,
something.
buddy. It's
Yeah,
not
like
happening. That is an immovable contract.
yeah. If we went to Brooklyn and we were like, "What do you think about Nikola Jovic?" They'd be like, "Attach like a protected first."
They would
Like,
send us 14 poo poo emojis in
yeah,
response. That's it.
yeah,
They would never return our
exactly.
calls.
So, but to your point, I think that's why what you said is so important, because you could make, speaking of game shows, you could make the case other than Bam, Jovic is the player most likely to be on this roster next season because he's going to be that hard to trade. So for that reason, yes, he has to improve. Pat Riley said, and we'll talk about this a little later, but in his end of season press conference that he anticipated that Jovic was going to be a starter alongside Bam in the front court, and in that
Mhm.
scenario, Norm was coming off the bench, and you and I talked about that in the preseason as well. So yeah, Nico, he's shown plenty of flashes, but they all are like around 12 to 18 months in the past now. There really wasn't much from this season to take from. For
And,
me,
oh, go ahead.
oh, go
Sorry.
ahead.
I was just going to say, and the other thing that Pat Riley had said was, this is the exact same thing that happened with Jaime Jaquez Jr. So, anybody who is, making a complete scratch of the player, I just wouldn't go that far yet. I don't think it's completely unfair to say that this guy's lost it, because that happens all the time in the NBA. But we've had a player just like this go through this exact same thing, and he became one of the most important players to our season this year. So that is what we all want for Jaime, or that is what we all want for Jovic, and hopefully he can make that happen.
Yeah, and then the Jaime comp is great too, because Spo mentioned, last season Jaime had like a groin issue that kept popping up, and injuries kept him from kind of getting in a rhythm. And the fact that Nico had really poor play on the floor and was also injured for a lot of the season, like those two things aren't a coincidence. Like I'm sure that impacted his ability to play. So hopefully he can come and have a really healthy season. It sounded like in his end of season press conferences, he's not going to participate with the national team. So maybe that would give him the opportunity to have a healthier summer and really be prepared for this upcoming season, where I imagine he's going to be in the rotation, either because the Heat aren't able to make a big move, or because they make a big move and he's all that's left. So regardless, he'll need to factor in for sure. I have a couple pretty basic ones. Bam needs to be more efficient. It's not fair to ask more of Bam, but this was like one of his worst true shooting percentage seasons. And a lot of that is because of the offense and because he had less shots created for him than ever before. Anybody that watched Bam like pre 2019, like all his field goals were assisted. Now he's creating much of his offense and a lot of offense for others. So having a true number one to get him easier looks would help, but I would like for his 3 point efficiency and just overall finishing to improve ideally. Cass's rim finishing, which I trust will get better, but he ended up at like 57% at the rim, which, as you and I were watching early in the season, that sounds amazing compared to how it started. But that's still like 31st percentile. So Cass getting more efficient at the basket, which normally with guards that happens usually. Like Tyler
Mhm.
was a pretty poor finisher coming in, and now he's a pretty good finisher around
Davion
the
as well.
basket. Yeah, and speaking of Davion, take more threes, man. We have back to back seasons where you're 39% from three, and you're taking
Let
four
him
per
fly.
75. Yeah, that's not enough. Like you got to get those up. We and you saw it in that Charlotte game. I mean, obviously he was feeling it, but like, man, you can be an impactful offensive player, but I text you. I wish I had this exact stat pulled up, but I think Davion scored 20 once all season. And I
Mhm.
was like, with the injuries we had, that just he's not taking enough shots, in my opinion. So more 3 point attempts from Davion for sure. And then my last two, these are kind of one and the same, but Jaime and Pella, the 3 point shooting, you just got to figure out a way to not be completely useless out there. To sound a little harsh, but I'm just projecting if this team were to improve and be in a playoff situation. I mean, you watch the way these teams are guarding, like
Mhm.
the Spurs are putting Wembanyama on guys that are much higher caliber shooters than Jaime and Pella, and he is ignoring them to roam and get blocks. So both those guys, I'm sure, will work on that, and hopefully we'll be able to improve those areas.
No, those are good call outs. Those are great call outs because I think that's one thing that I want to see next season is honestly an offense that maybe revolves around Davion Mitchell a little bit more. I think over a 2 season sample size, we've seen the fact that this guy was a pretty early draft pick. Like there's a world where the Kings could have been starting to build around him after they drafted him. And that wouldn't have been the craziest thing to do just because he's clearly talented and he has all the specs that you want from an offensive player and a guy to run your offense. And if we are going to maybe shift away from the Noah LaRoche system into something a little bit more efficient or a bit more of a blend, I do think he's really effective at managing the pick and roll. I think he could have some awesome chemistry with our bigs and Bam and Ware if they're still here. More whether or not Ware is still here next season. And I would just love to see that because, again, he's a very efficient shooter and he's been great from three. And why are we not leaning into that volume unless we think his shooting is a little bit of a hoax and it can only come through smaller volume and that it wouldn't scale? I don't exactly know the methodology and how to find out whether or not a guy can really do it at that scale other than seeing him put up 10 threes a game. So I'd like to see some more offense run through Davion moving forward, just because he's been one of our most consistent players on both sides of the ball. Like
Yeah.
there's a case that could be made that this guy could be have an All Star season if he had the usage rate of an All Star, just based off of what he does on the floor.
Yeah, it's true, and it's one of those things. And yeah, I mean, I don't think you and I think Davion's going to be an all star, but your point is
Mhm.
when you see someone excelling in their role, especially a guy who's still pretty young in Davion. I mean, he's not well, he's actually 27. That's older than I thought, but regardless, he's just entering his prime. So you do kind of think, all right, man, like I know for a while Davion was trying to like stick in the league. I mean, it felt like
Mhm.
that was in danger, but he's got a year and a half now in Miami system with really good production, really good efficiency. So now I'm like, okay, man, yeah, let's expand that role a little bit and open yourself up to some bad games. I feel like he didn't really give himself that opportunity very often. There are a lot of Davion games where like if he started 1 for 4, he was ending like 2 for 6. You know, like, he
Yeah.
wasn't about to, like, kinda work through it, and to your point, he had a 17% usage this season, which is 12th percentile for point guards. So, I mean,
Mhm.
he was not, as much as he had a lot of assists, he was not handling the ball a lot, not creating a lot, and that's in line with his usage last season and honestly for most of his career other than his rookie year in
Yeah,
Sacramento,
and
so
so and there's a chance that that's just as good as he can be, and maybe he doesn't necessarily have the mentality to push beyond that kind of usage rate or have that kind of responsibility. Like, sometimes you find your comfort zone, and it's like, "I could do so much in this time. I like getting other guys set up," and he loves playing defense, clearly. But I'd like to see, I mean, can this guy have, like, a Kyle Lowry type prime? Like, obviously it wouldn't be the span of his career because it started off kind of slow, but can he get to that peak for 2 3 more years, and even having a late stage Kyle Lowry career after that, where you can just be really really effective with the ball in your hand? I'd love to just see if it's possible. I don't know if it is, but the green light signs are kind of there for at least us to explore that a little further going forward.
yeah. Yeah, and the nice thing about Davion is he showcased, like, I'm a good guard on a playoff team. Like, to
Mhm.
me, obviously, we didn't see that this season that the Heat weren't a playoff team, but there's no doubt in my mind that if you put Davion on the Pistons, like, he would be playing a lot right now. Like,
Mhm.
he is the type of defensive, gritty, playmaking, able to shoot point guard that would work well in the postseason. So hopefully we'll get to see that. Next weekend, just to kind of finish off the recap, I want to do some highs and lows, just especially for a team that doesn't make the postseason. I think a lot of the regular season can be forgotten. So, Lino, why don't you start us off? You can go high or low, dealer's choice. But what are some of the memorable things for you from this season?
I'll start off with the low. I think the high level low for me, high level low is a crazy term. It's around February, January, February. We went on like a 10-game losing streak when we were maybe a game behind the third or fourth seed. Like, we had a chance to really put some distance between us and some of the teams that were struggling in the play-in race, and we just fell so far down to the point where we were just back in contention for the eighth or ninth seed. We started winning a little bit more, and then we took another losing streak. And that second losing streak, by then I had kind of already accepted the fact that we're just going to be in this play-in race. But in February, I was like, we had some injury stuff after the holidays. December was kind of hard, but like, we have, like, everybody's coming back, everybody's getting healthy, or it's after the All-Star break. Like, we're good to go. All we got to do is win a few games, and we can put significant distance between us and some of these other teams. And what ended up happening is the Hawks and the Raptors took our spots that we had. And so that was really frustrating coming out of the All-Star break, because it's also coincided with Norman Powell's terrible end of the season. And so everything was just all bad. Tyler was still kind of in and out of the lineup. Um, we just could not hold on to games to save our lives. And I was just kind of watching what could have been a promising season slip away. Like, at that point, we were kind of at a crossroads where it's like, okay, this season can go one of two ways. We can make a push and at least stay steady. Like, if we like made a big push and then just kind of went 500 through the rest of the season, we could have at least had a good comfort level at the sixth seed, at maybe even the fifth seed. We don't have to win all of our games to do that. We just have to win the right ones. All we did was lose them games that should have been winnable, for one, and also not really put up a great fight against games that were going to be tougher for us anyways in the schedule. So at that point, that was tough because they had just kind of got me to buy in on that. Oh, like, we have an offense that can work here, and that's still good enough defense. But our defense, that through that stretch, I think is the worst it's been in like Miami Heat history, or at least over the past 5 years. And the offense just wasn't good enough, and it was just not fun to watch either. So, you got that and the holiday blues and not being in the holidays anymore. Bad combo. Lowest point of the season. Do you want to give yours first, or should I give my high?
No, I'll follow up with my low or one of my lows because it's similar to yours. Mine was that early December stretch
Mm,
where the smoke and mirrors started to fade away. Because
yeah.
like if you look at the Heat schedule, they lost to Orlando in the opener, which they're always going to lose that game. But then it's like lost to the Spurs, Lakers, Denver, New York. Like, and this is through October and November. It's like they had only lost to pretty good teams. And then December hits, lost to Orlando, which again, that's fine, but lost to Dallas, and then that Sacramento loss. That was I remember feeling like a disappointed parent, or maybe even a better comp to go full Bill Simmons. It's like when you take back an ex that cheated on you. And you were like, I trusted you and you betrayed me again. I thought it was going to be different this time.
Everybody told me that you would.
I
I didn't
know.
believe them. I didn't listen, and
It
here
was
we are.
it was yeah, that was a rough one. And then to that trend, like any of the losses to the bottom 10 teams, like both Pacers losses were agonizing. And in hindsight, I guess you could look at it either way. Like, yes, those kept them from, maybe being the seventh seed or even the sixth seed, but also if they would have won those games, they still could have been knocked out in the play-in and would have had even a worse pick in the draft. So, you could go either way. And the only other one I had was injury stuff. Tyler's availability was a big low, and then we covered Nico as well as
Mhm.
disappointing. So what's a positive thing you have for us?
Well, the positive is, that great feeling when you get back with your ex and you believe it's all going well before it goes bad. The first quarter of this season was magical. I'll save the real one. I'll let you go into the real best part of the season. But for me, those first like 20 games where we went like 14-7, we were like winning over stretches of time. We're winning like 5 games in a row. I think November, we almost went undefeated through the whole month. And it was just magical. It was like, we are literally so back. All the stats say a team that starts off this strong is going to have a great season. We have like the number one offense. We have the highest scoring offense. We've like broken several records at this point, from either like highest points in a quarter, highest point and a half, highest like point differential. All these things is like Spo's figured it out. The players have unlocked something special. The guys we brought in last season finally had a full offseason, and we're just bombs away until Tyler comes back. And then when Tyler comes back, we can even take this to another level because we'll have depth. And we're in conversations about, can we get home court advantage in the playoffs? Like, that is where we were. And before the fall, you're just so close to the sun and it's nice and warm and you feel good about everything. So at that point, it was definitely my favorite part of the season.
Yeah, it's funny, yeah, because part of that whole journey was Clippers fans being like, "Just wait." Like, "What do you mean? Norman Powell's an all-star. This is amazing." They're like, "Just wait." We're like, "No, we got him for free. This is incredible." They're like,
Mhm.
"Just wait." And then sure enough, just like last season, amazing hot start for Norm, and then he gets injured, and then he falls off a cliff. And now you would, at least I think I can speak for both of us. We're both kind of would be okay if Norman Powell was not on the team next season, which is crazy considering I was
Wild.
like, should I get this jersey just a few months ago? But yeah, the number one high that you left on the table for me so graciously, of course, is the 83-point game. Not only for how much fun that was, just for anybody on your team to do that, but for such a special person in Bam that represents Heat culture and everything good about this organization in such an amazing way. So it's just such a cool time to celebrate him. Honestly, maybe my second favorite moment after that was Spo eviscerating people criticizing Bam for that, and like the following game's pregame press conference when he gave that awesome quote about like, what did he say? He's like, he's basically like, I'm a Darwinist. I can't remember how it
Yeah.
was, but he was like, I don't care about being fair. Like that's the beauty of the NBA. Like play it however you want. And he said, I'm going to apologize to absolutely no one. So that was amazing. And then little smaller ones, Cass being like the best 3-point shooter percentage wise in this class. Rookie class was awesome. And then the Myron Gardner Oklahoma City game where he started and the Heat beat OKC.
Oh, yeah.
That was super fun.
I gotta give my flowers to Myron Gardner, man. He, through ups and downs, it was always fun just having an absolute maniac on the bench or on the court at any given time.
Yeah, and talk about you want to criticize Spo. I mean, I probably shouldn't say this on the record, but in that Charlotte game after LaMelo hurt Bam, I was like, put in
Mhm.
Myron. Let's
Throw him
let's
in
just see what
there.
happens.
It's just
You know,
you wouldn't be culpable,
yeah,
who knows what was supposed to happen? We're down a man, we gotta figure things out.
yeah, good spark plug off the bench. Anything that happens after that, that's
Myron
not
Gardner
news,
would have
bro.
had LaMelo Ball in the walls of Jericho
Oh
by
my
the
god.
5th minute.
He would have gotten LaMelo Ball's own metallic Lamborghini on the court and run him over with.
Just true WrestleMania styled antics would have taken place immediately after Myron Gordon
Wait,
took the
who's
court.
that? Who's that? It's
Oh
Myron
my
Gordon.
God.
Just the elbow through his head.
Just a flying elbow. He's doing shooting stars off the backboard.
They're evacuating the fans. Um, so those were good moments. What was not a high or a low, which was kind of just par for the course, was the Pat Riley postseason press conference. Which I will say, par for the course for that is good because in years past he's said like very inflammatory things that have alienated Kyle Lowry, Jimmy Butler, Tyler Hero. So the fact that he kind of just said his basic, trademark commandments of this Heat team is fine. If anybody missed it, main takeaway is if you follow local reporters in South Florida, whether it's Barry Jackson, Ira Winderman, Ethan Skolnick, like those guys are plugged in. Everything they've told you about how this team feels and operates is exactly what Pat said. Said he wasn't going to apologize for being in the play-in. Said they're always going to try and win no matter what. Said he didn't see the point of trading away guys at the trade deadline when he thought they had a chance to compete. When he was pressed on that, he said he didn't think they could compete for a championship, but felt like they could compete in the East, which your mileage on that may vary. But yeah, I wouldn't say we learned anything crazy new. He didn't sound super high on Powell or Wiggins returning, and it did not sound like a hero extension was coming. Those were probably like tangible things that they're not ruled out, but it didn't seem like they were a priority for him. So, do you have any other takeaways from Riley's press conference?
Yeah, there were moments where at least there seemed to be some kind of clarity, and then there were moments of frustration through the whole thing, a lot of repeated rhetoric, a lot of the same things we've heard before that I think really infuriate the fan base, and rightfully so. I have come to terms and accepted what this front office is and what this franchise is and their desire to be competitive. I am concerned that at first, through the first half of the press conference, I was concerned that this team felt a little too proud of making the 10th seed and exiting in the play-in. Their quote of always wanting to be competitive felt like cognitive dissonance. I was like, okay, we want to be the most competitive team. We want to compete always. We finished 10th and lost to the Charlotte Hornets, who had, quite the run this season. But like that's not what we did. We didn't compete this year. Like we weren't competitive this year. Like, yeah, we tried hard, but that is worth almost nothing in the grand scheme of basketball. So that part of the press conference where Pat Riley was kind of applauding the team and the franchise in certain ways to kind of big up the idea that this team is never going to tank. I get that as a concept. I get that we always want to be competitive, but we need to accept the fact that that is not what we were this year. This was not a competitive team. This was not a competitive organization. And ultimately, this team was a failure in all things considered. When we zoom out, like we can zoom in and look at little successes here and there, but if you were to zoom out to the big picture, it would look like a failure. And that happens. You can't succeed every season. I don't fault this team for being bad. Like, this was not a roster that if you were to just give to a random person in a vacuum and say, is this a good or a bad team? They probably wouldn't tell you that it was a great team. They probably wouldn't say that this team is going to go to the finals. And I don't have those expectations every season, and neither should the organization because no team does that. But the idea that this team was competitive, I think, is a false claim. And Pat really kind of pushed that rhetoric through the whole thing, and that this team, wanted to compete at the highest level. And not only can it not do that, it did not do that. But at a certain point in the press conference, he did say that, we didn't accomplish what we set out to do. We played worse than we wanted to, and we're not happy about where we ended up. And that is at least some concession to the reality of what this team is, and I'll take it. But ultimately, it is frustrating that this team is not necessarily going to maybe entertain the extreme ideas that could course correct us and put us in the right direction. So there's a chance we could be looking at more mediocrity moving forward. And that all starts with Pat Riley. Like he leads that. He talked a lot about not being the final decision maker, but I think we all know who leads the conversation in these situations. And ultimately, I'm just glad that he didn't piss off any players, and I am happy that we're not committing too much money to this roster. Like, I'm glad that they're not going to, I can understand and respect that they don't want to tank, but I will not and could not understand dishing out really heavy contracts to these guys who probably aren't like to a roster that's just not good enough. So hopefully he sticks to his word that this team isn't good enough and that we need to make changes, and we'll have to see what happens.
Yeah, it like you highlighted it. I get what he means, but when you really break down what he's saying, a lot of it feels like they're contorting reality to fit what they want to be deemed successful. Like you're saying, like, okay, if you want to compete every year, but you didn't trade for Trey Young or John Morant when they were definitely available, and if you trade a first or a couple firsts, you definitely would have gotten them. Then it's like, okay, so you're acknowledging you're not that close and not close enough to take a distressed asset, but you won't go as far to be like, okay, we should actually go the other way, trade Norman Powell and Andrew Wiggins for whatever we can get to prepare for the next, superstar acquisition that might vault us to contender status. So, and again, that makes sense. Like, I don't think they should have traded real assets for Trey or Ja. But again, if you're saying you want to compete constantly, I don't. I think it kind of sounds like you're talking out of both sides of your mouth if you're Pat Riley, if you're not making marginal moves, But I get, there's only so many things you can say. But to me, my main takeaway, and this is obvious, I guess, but it really feels like with the decision makers in place now, and again, like you alluded to, seems like there's like five guys that really control the Heat, right? It's the Arisons, Mickey and Nick. It's Pat, Spo, and it's Andy Ellisberg, and that seems to be pretty much how all the decisions are made. And Riley alluded to there have been some trades he was for that didn't happen, some trades he was against that did happen. So we don't know the ins and outs of how all that works exactly, but to me, it seems like the Heat will either be 500 if they don't get a top 15 player, or they'll be a contender if they get a top 15 player. That's not the worst outcome, but it is something that I think it's really important for all Heat fans to accept. Like, if you go into the summer, they're going to try and get Giannis, they're going to try and get Donovan Mitchell, maybe Jaylen Brown, maybe whoever else becomes available. But those are very hard things to do. Most of the league will be trying to get those guys. And if that doesn't happen, I would expect most of the same roster to be back and them to be competing for a play-in spot again. And, famously, as Barry Jackson said, face reality. That's kind of what you have to do in this situation.
Yeah, I'm glad the season's over. I'm ready to move on. I'm ready to have an off season where I'm gonna miss Heat basketball, and there'll be a point where I wish it was on the TV again. But if you were to tell me that there was a surprise game tomorrow, I would dread to watch it. Like this was a hard season to. It was a hard pill to swallow as far as seasons are concerned, and that Pat Riley pressure was frustrating, but was at least a sign that like, okay, now we get a break, and we'll get some fresh movement on this team before we have to watch them play basketball again.
That's honestly a incredible hypothetical you just threw out there. I had not considered that. If I got some announcement like, "Hey, there's an error," the who Portland and Miami have to replay a game from February. It's happening tomorrow, same rosters. I'd be like, "Ugh, no, thanks." Like, no,
We
obviously,
also got you free tickets and courtside, and we'll fly you out. Wow, I've had enough.
yeah,
Thank
I
you.
gotta
Sorry.
check
Awful
work.
on those. I'm watching my diet. I'm watching my stress levels.
So and that is like, I'm a huge Heat fan. That does say a lot that, and again, like in August, I probably will be feeling that way, but like with high quality
Mhm.
NBA playoff games happening right now, if there was a secret vault hidden track Heat game, I'd be like, I know what this team is. I don't need any more information.
I think that is what happened. Like you hit a point in the season where you're like, I just know what the team is. Like I
Mhm.
know we're gonna get into that play-in and lose. And I felt that way in February. And so it's like when you have at least a little bit of hope of like what you think the team could be and you're not really sure, There is at least still trying to discover it early on, and if it's not settled, or maybe it's settled into something like, "Oh, I think this team really has a shot, win or loss," like, that's something to carry through a season. When you get to February and you feel like your team is just dog water and they don't have what it takes, and you can see the pieces lining up to have an epic failure in the play-in tournament, it's hard to sign up to watch those games night in and night out as a Heat fan that watches all 82. Like, it's tough to sign up if you've already checked out. And
Yeah.
so it made the
Well,
season particularly difficult.
especially with how competitive the team is, because you see
Mhm.
Spo in those post-game press conferences being like, "We're gonna find a breakthrough. It's gonna happen." And it's like, my guy, I don't think it's gonna, and I hate that for you because you are in it. But it's
Mhm.
it's hard to watch. And to your point, this was the ultimate betrayal because you had the post Jimmy trade Heat team from last season that was miserable. And then you start this season. Really, the only difference is Norm Powell, but it starts so well you're like, oh, it was the bad vibes from Jimmy. Everything's turned around. And then it's like, oh, just kidding. They're the same team. So it's like,
Yeah.
okay, we had a year and a half after everyone already knew they were the same team. But again, the Heat are only going to go for big names, and there weren't any available. They didn't get any. So then they are kind of just forced to run it back and make marginal moves, which again, I think is obviously always going to be the most likely outcome because it's just very rare to trade for superstars. But of course, maybe this will be the offseason it happens. To finish up here, just quick news. The NBA lottery happened. It was very exciting from a league standpoint. There's crazy stuff with the Clippers and Pacers. But as far as the Heat are concerned, they had the 13th best odds essentially to move up. And because of that, they did not. They will have the 13th pick. It's a good draft. There's some guys I'm very excited about in that range. We have about 5.5 weeks till the lottery, so we'll probably do some like prospect preview episodes where we talk about our favorite guys in that range. LeBaron Philon, if he's there, he's my pick right now, a guard out of Alabama. I've just watched him for a couple years now. He's kind of been on my radar because there's a chance he might have come out last draft. But I like him a lot and think he would be a good Heat type player. So, Lino, do you have any lottery thoughts, or do you think the Heat will even use this pick? Do you think he'll end up getting traded?
I'd like to see us trade up.
Yeah,
I'd like to see if we can get into a top 10 pick. If somebody wants Andrew Wiggins or do some sign in trades with the guys that we have, and we can get a young guy in the top 10. I'd love to see that happen. And I'd like to see us use the pick. Otherwise, I wouldn't like us to trade back, and I don't know what we'd even get for the 13th pick from a player standpoint. So, unless it would sweeten the pot for the Giannis deal or something like that, I'd rather us, just continue to bring in some younger players into the franchise. LeBaron is his name.
LeBaron.
LeBaron, close enough. Welcome home, LeBron.
Man, I saw that float. The Lakers were eliminated yesterday. I saw that getting floated around like
Also,
trade
yes, I
Giannis.
would do it. I would trade away. I would trade away the entire season next year to bring in LeBron on like a $15 million contract.
Oh man, I
I would like the
disagree.
season's going to suck next year if he's doing a goodbye tour for a year, and I just get to watch LeBron in the Heat jersey. If we are going
No,
to win, if you think that we're going to win 46 games anyways next year, and it's
right,
either 46 games of a roster that has to get blown up at some point anyways, and we could just do it while watching LeBron play in the Heat jersey again for the
bro.
last time ever, sign me up.
Bro, respectfully, hell no. Because the problem is, if he's on the team, 500 million more people are going to be talking about how mid the Heat are. Every day, Skip Bayless is going to be talking about the Miami Heat. I love LeBron. I hope he goes somewhere else because we're not the team for him.
LeBron and Bam, they did great in the Olympics. He loves playing with Bam.
Golly.
Davion Mitchell, he's got defenders, he's got athletic guys. We get
Oh
some
my
shooters in the building with him. We get Bronny over here.
God. Bro.
We'll be good, bro. It'll be better than the alternative.
Oh my god! All right, well, you heard it here first, folks. The Miami Heat will be acquiring Giannis Antetokounmpo this offseason. Wait, what did I say? So we'll catch you guys on the next episode. We will probably be doing some draft work because that is the next thing on the NBA calendar, and we'll probably do some kind of offseason primer, let you know where everything sits with the cap, who guys the Heat are going to target other than Giannis. Obviously, they will be in on that, like the rest of the league. But until then, thank you guys for tuning in. We really do appreciate everybody for another season of NBA basketball. We know it was not the most fun thing to endure. So, anyone that was willing to also then go listen to a podcast about an unfun season, we do truly appreciate all of you for tuning in. And also, if there's any prospect or any offseason thing you're curious about, as always, please leave a comment or question. We'd love to kind of get into all of that with you all on the next episode. So, for myself, Micah, my good fellow host and friend Lino, we appreciate you all for tuning in, and we will see you next time.